Welcome everybody to this latest in the ValuesJam guest series session. And Abimbola, it's great to have you here. So to start off with, would you please introduce yourself and tell people about the great work that you do?
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for having me here this morning. So as Alan rightly said, my name is Abimbola Olayinka. I'm popularly known as the Peace Connoisseur. So I equip leaders at home and at work with peaceful tools so that they can deal from a place of peace with family and with co-workers at work. We all know the importance of peace in our lives. You know, when there's no peace of mind, there's nothing you can actually achieve successfully. Everything you do will be from a place of chaos. So I equip you with all you need to function maximally as a human that you are. And you can find more of my works on my website, abimboloolayinka.com, peacefulleadership.com, peacefulparenting.com. And also my Instagram handle is Abimbola Olayinka Official, Galparenting, Peaceful Leadership, and Peaceful Parenting Hub. Thank you, Helen, for the opportunity.
Oh, it's great. So, I mean, a bit of a common theme around peace there. So I wonder, I don't want to tempt fate, but I wonder whether the card will come up, but we'll see. So first off, I'd like you to guide me. How many times would you like me to cut the deck?
2 times.
Twice. So I've got 3 piles in front of me now. And would you like pile 1, 2, or 3?
2.
2. Okay. And we've got 4, 6, 8, 11 cards here. So number between 1 and 11?
2.
2. Well, this is really quite strange. So we have protection of the environment. And the reason I say this is quite strange is because on Thursday, there is a group call, and it's a group values jam about protection of the environment. So how strange is that? It must be the week. So to start off the values jam, I'd like to ask you, what does protection of the environment mean? And secondly, from a kind of metaphor perspective, what does that look, feel, and sound like for you? So what does protection of the environment mean, and what metaphors do you associate with it?
So when we say protection of the environment, to me, it connotes our ability to guard the environment spiritually, physically, and socially, so to speak. Because your environment is anything outside of your own.
Okay. And what comes to me for protection of the environment, and it is kind of prompted by what you've just said there, is something about for the future. Rather than regarding it as something that we can just use for ourselves now, it's more of a forward-looking view to protect it. And what about, so what does that look, feel, and sound like to you? What does protection of the environment look, feel, and sound like?
Because of my core, children would come to me first.
Okay.
Because of my core. And everything that we have presently, the earth, the atmosphere, everything that will protect the future of the children, that will make them to be successful, everything around that centers around the children, both the atmosphere, the land, and every physical thing we can see. So that's why I said spiritually, physically, and socially, it's all embedded in it. If you check for the environment, for the future.
Yeah, and for me, when I think about metaphors, I think back to COVID times, actually, because I live in London, and it was noticeable that the air was cleaner during COVID, because not planes in the sky polluting the atmosphere, and the sky was often blue, not smoggy, and So a clear blue sky is something that I associate with protection of the environment. So that's maybe at that high level. And then I think of big trees just swaying in the breeze as well, looking really green and healthy. And then I see crystal clear blue seas with fish and life in the sea. So that's what it looks like. What does protection of the environment sound like? I think it sounds quiet actually and natural. So I just hear the wind blowing through the trees and the birds singing and sounding lively and happy. And what does it feel like? Protection of the environment feels like, I think it feels like being proud to be part of the world and to be in harmony with it.
Absolutely.
What thoughts do you have in that metaphor space?
You've just described peace of mind, peace at home, and peace in the world. And that is just what it is, which I mentioned that based on my core. So it's a peace we're able to live in the environment that will prosper the future of our children. The blue sky you see is because there was no manufacturing company working. So the sky was blue, the water was clean, nor hazardous content being poured in the water. The fishes were happy, there was peace, even at home. That was the point, whether you had positive relationship with your family members at that point, because there was nowhere to go. So even within your family climate, there was peace to a certain level based on the work you've done. But if you haven't done well, if you haven't protected that immediate environment well, you must have also gotten your report card by not having that peace at that particular time. So it just speaks to me that we're talking around peace, basically.
Mm. And so it's interesting, isn't it, when we start digging into this, a question in my mind now is, when we describe how beautiful it would be for the environment to be well protected, it just raises the question, so why do we find it so difficult to do that? Because we know that the sky is not always blue. We know that the sea is not clean. We know that we're doing terrible things in the world, that our children will not be able to enjoy certain things. So why are we allowing that to happen, do you think?
So I think it's basically because of a negative programming, selfishness. We
Yeah.
just want everything for ourselves without thinking about the future. We want everything now, and I believe that is just our programming, the way we're raised. So we're not even thinking. So it is the lack of empathy, Helen. Empathy. Empathy for self too, because if we don't use the environment well, we will still feel the impact in the future. So we do not even have that understanding as individuals. All we want is just immediate prosperity for ourselves and our immediate family. So we're not concerned about the implication of that to the environment. And that is a problem we're facing.
Mm. And it strikes me also that the relationship that we have with the planet is almost that the planet is a resource for us to make use of, rather than regard ourselves as closely connected with it and symbiotic. Yeah, it seems that it's something that's just there to be used as we wish, rather than have more respect for it.
Like I said, it's a programming. It's that negative belief that was handed to us. And that's the script we're running. The environment is supposed to be preserved for our good. But we were not raised in that way because we are all dealing based on what we know, how we know, and we're doing it to the best of our knowledge, actually. And we have also refused to reprogram ourselves, but it's not generic. We still have people that you're trying to preserve the nature the best way they can, but they are very few. And that's why we're not feeling it the way we should. So I feel going forward, we should also reflect, we should take a step back and reflect. How do I preserve my environment? So it begins at home. How are you preserving the people in the house? What skills, what values are you handing to them for them to understand that you protect yourself, you protect your immediate environment for your good, for the good of others.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not giving them the right tools, they would also be asking the same question in the nearest future to come. So it starts with us.
Yeah. And I agree with that it starts with us, because if we don't take action, then nothing will change.
No,
But I think one of the issues with protection of the environment is that people feel that their own personal actions on their own are not enough. And maybe there's a sense that people are waiting for somebody else in positions of power and authority to make decisions that will have a greater impact. I'm thinking, for instance, in this country, over the last few years, plastic bags in shops used to be given for free. And of course, because they were free, people used to take them and use them. Then there was a charge introduced, and that was introduced by the government, and the companies had to follow. And I haven't seen specific research on it, but I understand that that has decreased the use of plastic bags enormously. But that wasn't individual action, it was a government action. So how do you see the contrast of the impact that people can have on their own versus those decisions made at a higher level?
So just like you rightly said, if we all take it upon ourselves without waiting for the government, the world would be a better place. In your space at home, you try to use probably paper bags against nylon bags, and you're teaching your children the same. In your immediate environment, you're preaching the good news of don't drop nylon bags, don't do this, don't do that. It will also go a long way. So it starts with the immediate environment, even before any decree from the government. The government can also do that, but if we're also not willing to take part in it, it will not be that effective. So it begins with self. It begins at home. Letting your children understand that they should not use the certain things. They should use the certain things because you are also doing the same. And it's not all the time we also need to get bags from the store if we're not buying a lot of things. So I remember that, I was on holiday to Seychelles some couple of weeks, and I saw beautiful sea colors. I saw the sky. I saw everything very beautiful because they take nature so seriously in that country.
Yeah.
So seriously that even the kind of bags they give you in the store, it's the kind of bag that would dissolve in water. So, and I asked questions. So even before the government actually made the rules, individually, they love their environment. They are so loyal to the environment. They are patriotic citizens, and they are doing it. If you mistakenly drop anything on the floor, you see somebody telling you, ma'am, could you pick that up, please? So I feel it starts with us. It is what we can all do, like you rightly said. It is what we can all do, but we have to make that change. We have to be determined that we want the best for the future. And it starts with our children. If the future is not good enough, our children will not enjoy the future. It's affecting the ozone layer already. It's affecting the atmospheric, everything now, because we're not deliberate enough. It's affecting us already. Look at the global warming in Europe, so it's that bad. So Alan, it starts with you today, it starts with me. The small change we can start to adopt in our individual places, spaces, and the good news we're preaching to our neighbors, to the immediate environment would also go a long way. Our children telling their mates at school, don't drop this, don't use this nicely, don't do all of that. The teachers in the classroom, the leaders at work, constantly making it easy on the workers by placing waste bags or dustbin somewhere where necessary, by ensuring that there are fines attached to some certain negative behaviors that would affect the nature. So it begins with us. If we take it seriously, I can tell you, Alan, the world will be a better place and we'll see drastic change in what we hope to see in our desire. My point.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. And I think that's a lovely example that you gave about the Seychelles. And I'm curious about that because what you've described is systemic. It's deeply embedded in their culture, their respect and appreciation of their surroundings, and then all of the actions and the decisions that are made. Whereas in other parts of the world, so for instance, in the UK, it is not at all systemic. People, and it concerns me actually that if we say it's down to the individual, and if everybody was to do their own part, then it will be better. My worry is that not enough people will do that. And so I think what's coming through here in this conversation for me is that we need to be more autocratic, and governments need to be a lot harder because this is so serious, and make the big decisions that people maybe won't understand, maybe some people won't like them. I'll give you an example. I saw a television program quite some time ago now, and it was about the big factory ships that are on the sea. And they basically take everything from the sea, and it's doing a lot of damage. And I was just sitting there thinking, well, in the world, why do we allow ships that size? Why can't somebody somewhere say, this is the biggest we will allow, full stop? So why do you think that is? Why is it that these things that are causing so much harm are just allowed to continue?
Agreed. Our insatiable need for what we want and what we need. That is just the greed, and that is the truth. Not that we don't know what is right, but our benefits would not allow us to activate that critical reasoning to understand that our immediate satisfaction would not suffice for the future. And that is within the government. Who is the government? We are the government. Alan. So it begins with us. So what I used to tell people during training and all of that is, we may not see the change immediately, right, Alan? But let's leave a positive culture for the humans in our care, for the ones we're raising, so that they will easily transition into this positive way of living life.
Mm.
So it will become a positive culture for them.
Yeah. And you've made me think of something here that this might sound a bit strange because, we're talking about the world, and we're talking about the climate crisis and really big, important things. But the example that I'm going to share with you is about litter. And you described how people react in the Seychelles, advising people that they should pick things up. Of all the things that irritate me, people leaving litter, I don't know why, but it really gets to me. And I just don't understand why, if you want to go and enjoy a beautiful park or a woodland area, why do you leave your sweet wrappers? Why do you leave your barbecue? Why do you leave your plastic bags take away food containers instead of taking it home with you and disposing of it. It's like it seems so easy. And like you've said a number of times, it starts with you, but it doesn't start with enough people, in my experience.
I agree. Sure. You're against that because it is against your programming. Probably growing up, you were raised in a functioning LV clean environment. Maybe mommy has zero tolerance for dirt. And she raised you in that manner. So I'm from the school of thought as well. I was raised, I can't stand dirt. I can't not. It's a trigger for me. So because it's against my programming. So I could visit you. It's not OCD. I tried to run away from that, and I would see a little, and I would what? Oh no, don't worry, mama. I said, no, it's okay. I'll pick it for you. So it's the way we were raised, and we were raised differently. So that is why you see that manifestation everywhere.
Yeah.
So God, if we talk to ourselves, we are able to tell other people, this is good, this isn't too good. Look at the positive effect of this good. Look at the negative effect of this not too good. In a kind manner, they begin to change. You know, we talk to our staff at work. We let them know, okay, you're raised this way, you're doing things this way, that's fine. I'm not saying you're wrong. Look at this alternative. Look at the outcome of the two. Which would you prefer? Oh, ma'am, I think this is better. It's okay, can we now do this? So they are not being forced to share. So I tell you, Alan, we can all make this positive change if we can all see the positive outcome, and the government can also drive it for the interest of the public, not just for their selfish interest alone as well. We can. Their behaviors, we learned them, and they can be unlearned.
Yeah, it's this pincer movement, isn't it? Where you've got people at an individual level, people like us making choices and decisions, and then at the same time, you've got the people in positions of power and authority making the right decisions, and those two happening together can be very powerful. And one without the other is probably not going to work, actually, because like you've described, you don't want people to feel as though they are forced and they have no control or no impact. And at the same time, you don't want to rely on people just doing it themselves without government making those big positive contributions that they're able to make. Now, so here's a question for us, and you've described where you have experienced protection of the environment. You know, you gave that example of the Seychelles. Where have you noticed a lack of protection of the environment?
You want me to? So are you referring to countries or the sector in the economy?
Whatever frame comes to you first.
Okay, so I'm from Nigeria, and I'm actually speaking directly from Nigeria. And I'll be honest with you, we have next to zero regard for the environment. I will be honest with you. So not everyone, like I said, is not generic, you know, but here you see leaders on the road and government are doing a lot to peak. So even if governments actually make any role against that, to enforce it, it's a major issue, you know, in this part of the world. We're thick-skinned, vites. So it takes a whole lot. It takes a whole lot. I'll be honest with you. The UK is more like a second home to me as well. I know that it isn't working in the UK as well. Then also basically, I think more about the grains, you know, because we use our wood for a lot of things. So every time deforestation and all of that is happening and all. So I think on that aspect as well, we can recycle things, we can innovate, you know, instead of doing this much harm to our environment. because I know that we're wonderful people, we're innovative, we're all of that, but we all like the lazy way to do things. And that's why it's easier for people to just go to the forest, cut down trees to make other things and all of that. So basically, I know those two countries. I know my country more. I see that. Then I think basically, I think that's just it. And the production of films from cars, and that is all over the world. And it's so harming the environment. I don't know how. So maybe if we can also innovate more and we don't use cars with films. I'm seeing electric cars now, and I can see that there's no exhaust, you know. Yes, so maybe if we can introduce more of that, but I don't know how soon that would work in my country because, you know, but in
Yeah.
developed countries, at least we're starting from somewhere in developed countries. So if we start there and we gradually introduce it to the developing countries, that would work. And I just feel, like I said, if we can just be reprogrammed, if we can delete that wrong programming we grew up with, and we understand that the little baby step we can make individually towards the positive change of the climate would go a long way. So I'm trying to bring it back home now. I don't want to look at the big picture. So the little baby step from the kitchen to the dining to the bedroom, downstairs to my immediate environment to the road, I think it will go a long way, Alan.
Yeah. And you mentioned Nigeria. Haven't you just had an election recently?
Yes, we just had a successful election recently.
And did the environment play any part in the party's manifestos?
Yes, 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 that they promised all of that, that they promised all of that, that the environment to be taken care of. And presently they're growing trees. Like I stay in Victoria Island here in Lagos, so I've noticed that they've started growing trees around, planting trees, planting flowers. I saw that. So they promised all of that. And with what I'm saying, I think they're likely to stick to it. We're doing a bit. They also have people cleaning the seas and all of that. But like I said, because of the wrong programming, they clean in the morning, you go there at night, it's already dirty. Just like you said, people visiting the beach, they leave their foil, they leave their waste, they leave all of that. So I think it begins at home.
Yeah,
Government will do the part. The leaders at home, it's essential for us to also do our part.
yeah.
So the collaboration of the two leaders would make the positive influence we desire.
Mhm. And you also, there's a couple of other things that you mentioned there. One was electric vehicles. So, even here where electric vehicles have increased over the last 5 years or so, but the main challenge there is that the infrastructure is still not really in place for it to be easy to use. And of course, without the infrastructure, it's really not possible, or people are really not encouraged to have an electric vehicle if you can't get your car charged when you need it to be. So it's kind of not as easy as saying we should just have electric vehicles. And you described the additional challenges that there might be in other parts of the world as well. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing that you touched on, you remember when you said about we're kind of naturally lazy, and so we just go to the forest and we chop some trees down, and then that's the way that we maybe generate some income or whatever it is. And it seems to me that there is a kind of superficial view of the problem, because if somebody cannot generate income, and if ultimately their only choice is to go to the forest and to chop down trees, then do you really expect people to do anything different? If that's how they're going to feed their family, isn't that what they're going to do? And so the question isn't about telling people you shouldn't do that. It's about solving the problem that they are going to the trees to solve.
So just like I said, Helen, the collaboration of the government and the leaders at home, the two leaders. So why are you cutting down trees? XYZ is why, and they will proffer solutions to the XYZ so that we can grow our forest. So they are not just going to tell them to stop. Then that means they're introducing more problems to the society. Do we want them to steal? No. But governments would ask questions. Why are you doing this? I need to feed my family. We need to survive. Okay. What other skills do you have aside this? Okay. So don't go to the forest no more. Go into this, go into that. So that's why I said the collaboration of the two, leaders at home and the government, that's leaders at work. So it will give us what we desire. But it's not going to be easy. It will take a while because change, it's not easy to accept for human mind, you know. So by I said that it may not happen now, but we can start it now. You know, it could be your grandchildren that would even benefit it, you know, it could be the great-grandchildren, but let's just start it now. Let's start synthesizing the environment, the community on the negative impact of this negative ways we're used to, and start making them to see the brighter future of the big future of the sacrifice, the small sacrifice we can start doing now for ourselves, for our future, because we would also not be at peace in the future if our children are not at peace. We're not going to be at peace in the future if the climate isn't at peace. So it's actually embedded, and it's, how would I put that now? It's like a cycle, so to speak. It will still come back to us.
Yeah. And we've talked a little bit about action at an individual level, and we've talked about action at a government level. But even then, is that enough? Because without solving the problem for the whole world, it doesn't solve it for anybody. So in a world where, you know, the government in Nigeria will be making choices and decisions in the best interest of Nigeria, the same for the UK, the same for Russia, the same for the US, it feels like it needs something more mature than that. It feels like it needs something at a global level rather than by country, by country, by country. But who's going to do that? You're going to do it.
You're going to do it as well, because it's the same. The leaders at home are the leaders at work. The leaders at home are the leaders at the global level. So if we change that mindset, that perspective from home, it would also influence the kind of conversations they will be having at the global level.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to. So if that mindset starts now, as a mother, I lead various organizations, and probably at the global level, if I'm having conversation now, my perspective will start to shift because my mindset is already altered positively. So if we start it individually, trust me, Alan, the conversation will change at the global level as well.
So let's play a game.
Okay.
What I'd like you to pretend is that you are all powerful and you have the power to change anything and everything. So what one thing would you put in place to help with protection of the environment?
Oh, powerful. Peace of mind, Alan.
Peace of mind. Okay. So you would come from the direction of, if everybody in the world at all levels had peace of mind, then that would mean that they were making the right choices and decisions for protection of the environment.
Absolutely, Helen. So I do say, if there's peace at heart,
Yeah.
there will be peace at home. And if there's peace at home, there will be peace in the world.
Okay. So that's the reason I love these conversations is because you get such different perspectives and points of view. And so your response to that question is a beautiful philosophical one. And I really love the thought of it. And it makes me laugh because my reaction is probably at the other end of the spectrum. So the thing that I would do if I was all powerful to protect the environment was to get the biggest companies in the world to agree to reduce the amount of international travel that they have happening by 50%. So, so where you've got big companies having their leaders flying all over the world for meetings and all the rest of it, I would be saying to them, over the last 3 years since COVID happened, we have realized that you don't need to be together all of the time. I'm not saying you don't need to be together any of the time, because undoubtedly it's important. But if, for instance, you and I met in person, we wouldn't need to meet in person for every meeting, right? We could do this for some of those meetings. And having worked in the corporate world, I know that the amount, and it would be fascinating actually to find out what the volume of corporate travel and flights is, and what the positive impact could be to reduce that. So isn't it strange how you went peace of mind and I went cut airline travel?
We're still driving at the same point, actually, so when leaders have that peace, right, you begin to think from a place of peace. You begin to see things clearly.
Yeah.
You begin to deep dive into that critical reasoning to know that there can be virtual meetings.
Yeah.
Because you have the time to think. When there's chaos, you can't even think clearly. Oh, we have a meeting. Okay, could you please book so. But when there's peace of mind, your brain would function maximum. No, we don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. We can meet virtually. We're taking all those impromptu decisions because we lack that total peace within. So we can't reason thoroughly, and that is the truth. But when there's peace at home, you had a wonderful breakfast for the family with the org, you get to the office, everything is going well. You reason things properly with your co-workers. Oh, sir, you don't have to. Amazing. Not that your co-workers are aware, you're subordinate, that you don't have to travel, but they can't bring it forward. But so when the workplace is actually filled with peace as well, a peaceful work culture, you embrace peace, you embrace ideas from the talent around you, and they will bring it so freely, knowing that you would even encourage them. So, and that's what we're preaching. When there's that peace at heart, the leaders will know that they only need to do 10% traveling, not even 50.
Yeah. And you've reminded me of, I used to work in the hospitality sector, and for some time I worked for Marriott, the hotel company. And there was a guy who was responsible for all of the Marriott properties outside of the United States. And you can imagine he spent a lot of his time flying. He told us that actually United Airlines, I think it was the airline that he used to fly with. And his name was on the tail fin of one of their planes because he was, one of the most traveled people. But when I heard that, I just thought, and what about your family? How often do you see your loved ones? And of course, since the pandemic, it means I think that somebody like him would be able to vastly reduce the amount of international travel that you do and still do a very effective job. So I think that's a fascinating area. And actually, let me, conscious of time, let me draw this to a close now with, it's always the same question. So what are you encouraged to do differently about protection of the environment as a result of our conversation?
I'll be more deliberate about my actions and inactions towards the environment. I'll be deliberate about my positive actions towards enhancing the preservation of my environment against how I dealt before.
And could you give me a tiny, small, concrete example of how you might start to do that?
Sure. Right about now, getting back home, I would ensure that we use less of nylon bags. We'll do more of paper bags in my kitchen, my house. That's from my home. And even in the office now, I would also ensure they explore more of paper bags. That is in my own tiny space. My contribution to the world will do more of paper bags. Because like I said, because of my core, more peace inclined. So probably I'll also do more towards preserving the peace of the people around me as well, so that they can positively embrace this new style that we would invest in, so to speak. So in my space, I'll start with that. What about you, Alan? What would you start doing from now?
Well, do you know what I'm going to do? This conversation and raising the topic of airline travel has fascinated me. So I'm going to do some research to try and understand what volume of flights are taken by people who are working for large corporate organizations. And then to speak to some people I know that are well informed in the area of the environment, to understand from them what the positive impact could be of a significant reduction in the number of those flights. So that's two things. One is to research what volume of flights there are by corporate organizations. And two is to quantify the positive impact that could be achieved by reducing that volume of flights. So again, isn't it? It's a lovely contrast where you're going to use more paper bags, and I'm going to find out some information. So, Abimbola, that's been a great values jam today. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much, Alan. I had a wonderful time. The conversation was actually very rich. And I think if we continue to do this in an individual space, we'll make the world a better place. Thank you, Alan.
Bye.
Bye, Alan.